Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the New Slang Podcast. This is episode number 24. I'm Thomas Mooney, the editor, writer, and curator of New Slang. So this week's episode is one of our oldest, perhaps most written about artists and singer-songwriters since we started New Slang a few years back. It's Mr. Ryan Bingham. If you look, through our archives, I'm guessing there's probably, 3 or 4 past interviews with Ryan, a handful of articles and about, I guess, Ryan's career, and probably like our biggest undertaking as a site, this old song catalog tournament that we did a while back. At the time, we had taken 68 of Ryan's songs and which was basically like what he had written in his career at the time, and then essentially put them all together and into this big tournament and kind of decided what was his quote best song. So it was basically Tomorrowland, Junkie Star, Roadhouse Sun, Mescalito, some stuff he did on various soundtracks, some pre-Mescalito material that we selected that was on either like Wishbone Saloon or Dead Horses or what have you. Any of the, I guess, the demos before that he recorded on his own and were sung at shows during those early days. So yeah, we were pretty excited to finally get Ryan on the podcast while he was down in Midland this past Thursday. He's currently on this 4 or 5 week tour with Brian Fallon, who you probably know as the lead vocalist of Gaslight Anthem. He just recently put out a solo record called Painkillers. And then also one of our favorite songwriters going around right now. And he's actually, if you go back to episode number 12, he was on the podcast, Mr. Paul Cawthon. They're essentially on this, I guess, going to be over in the East or on the East Coast these next few shows. So if you're around the New York or Boston, DC, Atlanta area, and you want to go to one of these shows, just go ahead and search for them on Facebook and get some more details on their schedule. So I'm not going to, just ramble off and like give you every single note on the show or anything like that, but I'll give you, I guess, a few tidbits of information. So Paul, he opened up the show acoustic, and I kind of was expecting him to play full band. So I have to admit, I was a little slightly disappointed at the very beginning, thinking, he's playing acoustic only. I wanted to see him full band because full band is just an experience with Paul. But about 5 minutes in, that just seemed a little foolish to even why that even crossed my mind. I really think like it's just all because of Paul's voice. It's this, this powerful Waylon Jennings kind of wail to it. There's a little bit of this Elvis swagger and some like Marty Robbins Western textures to it, and a little bit of like Van Morrison horn aspects, I guess, to it. But yeah, this record is amazing, and like I said, if you haven't already listened to it, go back to episode number 12. Me and Paul really go into talking about the making of this record on that podcast. So, yeah, go ahead and do that. After this, of course. I guess it's just one of those things. When you're in a band like Gaslight Anthem, I think people, I wouldn't necessarily say that they think that you're going to be playing just Gaslight Anthem songs or anything like that. I think you have to give a little bit more credit than that. But at the same time, I think there is a little bit of the crowd hoping that you'll go into some of them. Personally, I think that you're just really kind of setting yourself up for disappointment if you do that. This was not a Gaslight Anthem show. This is Brian Fallon and the Crows. And like I mentioned before, Brian, he has this new record called Painkillers out, which I guess was released back in March. I hadn't really dived into the album when it was released. I'd only listened to I guess some of the late night performances and the promotion single kind of stuff. I guess I wasn't really too familiar with this new material, but I thought it was pretty amazing. Since then, I've really gone back and listened to the album, given it its proper attention, I guess. And I think one of the most, I guess, interesting aspects of the night was the I don't know if I would necessarily call it culture shock between Brian and these West Texans, but this little bit of culture shock and I guess sharing of culture that was happening in between songs. I think there was definitely an aspect to Brian's interaction with the crowd that was supposed to be a little sarcastic, but genuinely I think it was a little bit just because that's just the way Brian is. Just that natural kind of New Jerseyan attitude. The attitude is a little bit in his voice, the way he's talking to people, and I think it kind of it made some people think he was angry or something, or I don't know, not necessarily happy being on stage or something. I think one of the funniest things was just people, I guess, differentiating West Texas and the rest of Texas, and I think Brian kind of found that strange in a way, or at least funny. It was some of the best stage banter I've heard in a while. One of the things he was talking about was how Ryan wanted to take him shopping and get him a cowboy hat and boots and stuff like that. And I really do think Ryan should go out and get a hat. If he's not been taken hat shopping while in Texas, I hope they stop at a shop someplace in Nashville. Maybe get Brian a Stetson open road or something like that. I think it would be a nice little look for him. So, like I mentioned before, these next few weeks are going to be up on the East Coast, and I'm kind of assuming that the roles of Brian and Ryan are going to be a little bit reversed once they're up in the Northern Territories. Down in Midland, it was very much a Bingham show, more so than it being this double bill headlining ordeal. And there was I guess a lot of the Ryan, the quote unquote Ryan fucking Bingham chanters out in the crowd. If you just catch my drift on what kind of people I'm talking about, which I don't know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I think it's kind of funny, just these guys who are out there just proclaiming their love for Ryan and by chanting Ryan fucking Bingham 100 times in between songs, every song. I've seen Ryan, I guess, 3 times now since this past November, and I still think this moment during the show always has, I don't know if it's caught me off guard, but it's one of those oh, I did not realize this was going to be the best moment of the show. And the best moment to me is them turning Bluebird into this really this rock and roll opus. Just the way they have transformed it into this this 10-minute burner, if you will. And if you go back and listen to the original version on Roadhouse Sun, I guess the bones of that are in there, but it's very much a I guess just a 3, I guess maybe a 4-minute song that's contained. It's a love song and everything, but it really, I guess, is they give it the some breath and some space when they play it live, and so it turns into this really, I guess, transformational piece. It really kind of sets the tone for the entire show, and I don't know, it's weird because you would think that is a song I don't know, South Side of Heaven or like Weary Kind or Hallelujah or whatever would be like the best moment of a show, and really like the Bluebird really outshines them all because it's not just about the lyrics, it's not about just the guitar or Richard Bowden's fiddle, it's all of it all kind of combined, and I don't know, to me that's the best moment of these Ryan Bingham shows of the last few years. Anyways, I could probably ramble on about this show and just really about like Paul, Brian, and Ryan's music for a while, but we'll save that conversation for like Facebook or Twitter or something. Speaking of which, if you're not following us on any of those, go ahead and do so. We're at New Slang on Facebook and newslang_LBK on both Twitter and Instagram. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes now if you haven't done so already. And if you can, go ahead and give us a rating and review on there. It really does help us out. It plays into the whole iTunes algorithm aspect. And, if we get more ratings and more reviews and all that kind of good stuff, we can get more, I guess, cooler people like Ryan on here. Which, that's not a dig at any of these people we've already had on before. We've had some pretty good guests on. So, yeah. Also, I'd like to give a giant thank you to one of our good buddies, Jason Adams. He's a supporter and proponent of genuine live music and art out here in Texas. And he's really been a good friend of New Slang for a while now. So, yeah, thank you, Jason, for all you've done. Okay, so, yeah, here's our conversation with Ryan. Thanks.
Okay, so you've been out there sound checking. We've heard you. I guess we'll see you twice tonight, or hear you twice tonight.
Okay.
We heard you do the Bob Dylan cover.
Mm-hmm.
Is that added into the set now?
Yeah, we've been doing that a bit. This is kind of the tail end of touring on this record, and we've been touring quite a bit over the past couple of years, and so some of these cities we're coming back to for the second time, so we thought we'd mix it up and play some songs by other folks as well that, have inspired me over the years, and just try to give the fans a bit of a different show as well than just the same songs. So,
I think like the last two times I saw you did the Terry Allen cover.
Okay.
That'd be a Law in Sunny Southern California.
Oh yeah.
That's love Terry.
Mm-hmm.
You play that on mandolin.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good little mix up there.
It's great. I've loved that song for so long, or I've loved all of Terry's songs for so long. Mm-hmm. So, we've done that. We've done Dogwood. Done a few other ones too. So we've just been trying to mix it up, night to night.
Yeah. Terry's just like, we've talked about Terry before,
mm-hmm.
and he's, I think like right now, starting to get some recognition
mm-hmm.
out in the national exposure.
Yeah.
When was the first time you met Terry? Like how was that first meeting?
Man, I met Terry, I want to say over 10 years ago, through a friend of mine out here in West Texas. And, I don't even really remember exactly where it was. If we were at a party at some hotel and everybody was hanging around playing music, in the courtyard, and, somehow a guitar got passed to me and I played a song and we all just kind of hit it off. And, I kind of met Terry and Joe Ely and all the Flatlander guys, all those guys about the same time. And, I just remember kind of hearing Terry's music and seeing some of his artwork and things like that. And it kind of, I can't even think of the word right now, but it just kind of, all the things that I kind of had going on in my mind and in my heart and soul about how I felt about the world and
mm-hmm.
kind of music, it just kind of made it all, just drove it all home, it was like, it just made it all, it made sense. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm not the only one that feels like this,
mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
One of the big things for me with Terry and like the Flatlanders and anyone really from West Texas was, growing up in West Texas, you kind of only get like that top layer of culture,
mm-hmm.
the MTV,
yeah,
VH1, and then all of a sudden as long as like your parents weren't in the art world. If your parents were in the art world, okay, that's easy to get there.
Yeah.
But then once you start discovering music on your own and you hear these guys for the first time and you go, oh, these guys are from where I'm from, and I guess it opens that door up for you in your mind where you're like, well, these guys were from here and they're singing about here, and it just makes it so easy to relate to,
Yeah. It's like, oh, there's your tribe, of people.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, that's where I belong, right over there, know?
Yeah.
I've been longing for that my whole life, and I finally found them,
That's what's like I guess like we kind of like romanticize the 70s in Lubbock, thinking about like, oh, the Flatlanders, Joe Ely, Jimmy Dale, like the Maines brothers, Terry, like, I don't know. In my head, like I have it in my head, like that all happened in a year, and they were all just hanging out, putting out records, and it really didn't happen that way. It's all spread out over time, and like, talking to any of those guys are just like, it was a little bit more boring than.
Yeah, it was still flat and dusty out there, at the same time, and even more so. I mean, gosh, if you think about how limited things are on the radio, or just kind of all the things that you're exposed to. I know being from Hobbs, just right across the border, it was just, there just wasn't a lot. They weren't throwing a lot your way, And so to hear that music and see what those guys were doing for me was like, oh man, that's, I can't believe that's going on right now. That's how it went. And it was just, that was probably the biggest influence and the biggest motivator for me of all to even consider playing music or even thinking I could do something with it,
Yeah. And those guys, like, what I find so interesting is, they started out in their 20s, but they're still going at it right now. And to be able to, like, create that longevity and, like, kind of stay at your core the same, but then also grow as a songwriter. Have you thought about, like, that in your head as, like, how do I stay relevant? How do I stay true to being a songwriter as I grow older?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of one of the things I learned from them early on, was just kind of the importance of just kind of, writing honest music or songs. I think you don't really have to worry about it that much. If you just, a friend of ours that I met through Terry and Joe and everybody, is an artist from New York. Her name is Kiki Smith, and she told me one time, she said, Ryan, if you just take care of your art will take care of you. And that was something that really hit home with me. And when you think about the big picture of it all, of the industry and the longevity and all of that stuff, you can dig into it as much as you want, and you can get as complex as you want with the issues and think about, well, how do I do this and how do I do that and how am I going to maintain what I'm doing? But at the end of the day, if you just keep it really simple and just take care of your art, it'll take care of you, and not even think about the rest of that. Don't even worry about it. Don't stress out about it. Just just make the kind of stuff that you're inspired to make and that makes you feel good. And like I've said it a lot, like I've always thought that songs were a bit of like having a conversation with someone. How do you expect someone to believe what you're saying if you don't believe it yourself? And whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, Terry says it's best. It's half truths and half lies, and it can go all kinds of different directions. But at the core of it, there's something in there that you are deeply influenced by or had a big impact on your life, whether you are very literal about it or not. So at the end of the day, if you're just if you're kind of slinging stories out there, that doesn't mean that they're all just made up.
Yeah, that's what
as in Terry's songs. I mean,
I was actually going to bring up one of Terry's specifically because I've had this conversation with probably 5 or 6 songwriters. The song "Truckload of Art." It sounds so real, but then if you think about it, you're like, no, there's no way that happened. But like it sounds
it
like
probably did.
It is one of those, like, did it happen? Like it just feels so real that it could have happened. But also at the same time, you think about it, you're like, is it? There's no way that really.
Yeah, a lot of of stuff. There's a lot of that stuff in there that did happen. That it's just like, wow. I've heard stories from those guys, and I've experienced a few stories of my own out here too, and I've realized real quick that it's not all made up.
Yeah, yeah. How do you when you look back at songs that are, I guess, now running on 10 years old?
Mm-hmm.
How do you relate to them now? Do you kind of keep in that mindset of when you play a song that was written 10 years ago? Do you kind of go back to that time, or do you see the songs different and evolve after you've obviously a different kind of a
I see them different in some ways, but they really take me right back there, right back when I wrote them. Those same feelings and emotions of how it came. And that's, to me, one of the way that I can keep playing songs every night. They have to really mean something to me for me to get up and sing them night after night after night, on stage, and and have that kind of conversation with people through the songs. So, they've definitely evolved, and I think some of the songs too that I've came to realize what they're about more now than I did when I wrote them. A lot of that stuff kind of comes from your subconscious, and in the moment you're just writing it down or venting it off your chest and letting it hang out there, and then sometimes it's a few years down the road I'll listen back to it or I'll play it and I'm like, oh, that's what that was all about.
Yeah. What was what's been the biggest revelation in a song that you've learned about?
It's kind of not really anything specific. It's just kind of deep personal things, whether it's through family or things I grew up as a kid that I didn't really understand in my early years, or maybe it's about society, about things going on in the world. Just, in your late teens, early 20s, there's, I felt like, especially coming from small town in West Texas and then traveling the world, over in Europe and Australia and all across the country. Even within the United States, you go from here to New York or LA or in between, there's so many different subcultures and different things going on in the country that you're just exposed to a lot really fast, and it was very humbling, very kind of scary at the same time, and some things make you angry, things going on in the world socially and politically, and you wonder why you're growing up and nobody really ever talks about that stuff, or, you start hearing other perspectives from people that live in different places in the world and start building your own ideas, and start seeing the world through your own eyes and not through everybody else's that you're raised by or, or wherever you live. And so that was, part of growing up, and part of kind of going through that phase and kind of, having a slight rebellious, attitude towards the world, and then kind of coming around and growing a little older and starting to understand maybe why I was feeling that way and why those things meant the way they did to me, and then settling in for the long haul. Having to starting a family and having kids and really start thinking about what's important in life, and it's just all those transitions I guess you go through, and music has been right there along the way. Each song, each album I think I've written almost feels like it's been a chapter in a journal throughout my life of just different phases I've gone through, and keep building off those same songs. You look back and think, man, I wish I would have took a little bit more time writing that song, or, maybe I wrote that line and it means something to me, but most people take it out of context, you know, and that's a big thing that, I've learned over the years is to go back and look at songs, and not to, just dwell on them too much, because some things you just kind of got to let them be what they are. That's how you learn from your mistakes. Just let that stuff hang out there and see how people react to it, and then figure out how you want to say it the next time. I'm a big believer in that, but that's some of the biggest things that I think I've gone through just musically.
Yeah. You've been doing these bigger tours as of late, these last couple of years, and I guess you were part of that big old Bob Dylan tour there for a while. When is these tours that you're, it's so scheduled out, what do you do in that time to kind of discover the area that you're in? For example, yesterday or earlier today, you posted a photo of you out in the White Sands in Mexico. What do you do to get those moments of where you're actually able to saturate the culture of a certain place instead of just being in a arena the entire night.
It's hard sometimes, you know, like it just you have to kind of fight for it a little bit more, you know. Whenever you have those days off, you know, you try to like plan ahead and be like, okay, where am I going to be on Thursday? And you know, I've got a couple hours. What's close by? You know, what do I want to go check out? What do I want to see? Sometimes it helps a lot. Just fans or local people in the area will hit you up on social media and tell you about cool things to check out, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a historical site or you know, a museum or just something that's interesting in town that you haven't seen before. And you start looking up, you know, facts and, you know, fact checking cities and things like that. But it's a little more difficult, especially on the bus. It's nice traveling, but you're kind of tied down to that bus and whatever alley it parks in. You're stuck to that dumpster. It's parked next to in the alley behind the arena. But you know, I did that tour with Willie last summer, and it was all in big arenas across the country, and you know, you'd play the show and go to sleep on the bus at night, and you'd wake up and the bus would be parked inside of the arena in a garage. You know, you just wake up and you could be anywhere in the world. Yeah. And then you'd get out and the arena would be surrounded by cornfields. Yeah, so you wouldn't have anywhere to go. You just hang out. But
yeah, well, that's one of those things. Driving up here, I saw that photo you posted, and I was like, well, I know it's not going to be a problem today in Midland.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to just see oil rigs, you know, just
go get drunk and ride some pump jacks or something, you know.
Go walk the mall. I don't know.
But we did, like, the White Sands yesterday was awesome. You know, we got up and, but it's a bit of a process. You know, we went and rented a car and kind of got, you know, between us and Brian Fallon's band, the guys in his band, we just kind of sent the word out, like, hey, man, we got a van going to White Sands. Does anybody want to go? And, you know, everybody loaded up, and we went out there and had a blast, and it was a great day off. You know, went and had some good food last night, and then rolled in. But you know, we get to where we play a lot more music too on the bus, because you get to where you're just sitting around, you don't really have anywhere to go. But we got all the instruments around, and we'll sit on the bus and we'll start working up cover songs, you know, songs by people we really like. And so that's been, you know, one thing of just playing a lot more music, and we get a little bit more time to sit and work on things like that. And then just getting a little older too, we're not always just heading straight for the bar. You know?
Yeah. The who on this tour, on any of these tours, have you met that, you know, I guess that you were officially like starstruck with? Did you, like, whenever you met Willie, was it kind of like?
Man, I don't know about Willie so much as I met him a long time ago. I used to play in that old bar that his road manager had, Pootie Lock, up there outside of Austin, the Hilltop. But there was somebody that I'd met recently where, you know, I was just, you know, I think that on that Dylan tour, you know, I mean, I'd always been a big fan of him, but I'd never had any expectations of ever meeting him. And when he started getting us up on stage to play the band song, you know, that was pretty cool. And, you know, every time we'd play the song, and he'd come over and shake your hand and say thanks for coming on the tour and stuff like that. And I don't know if I was really starstruck, but it was just kind of like, yeah, you know,
like
wow,
a surreal moment.
It was just really surreal. Yeah. I mean, being around all those, even, you know, the Wilco guys and My Morning Jacket, and that whole tour was just fantastic. Everybody was so friendly, and, you know, a lot of times kind of those collaborative tours and festivals and things, people can be quite jaded and conceited, and a lot of egos floating around the room, and people don't really collaborate. They kind of stick to their corners and things like that. But the more that I've realized getting around kind of the people that are real professional and that have been doing it for a long time, they're all pretty open, and they don't really have anything to be insecure about, and they're always willing to collaborate and get you up on stage and have fun if everything's going in the right direction, you know. And so that was just such a it was real refreshing, you know, just to kind of meet some people like that were just really open, and, you know, not just kind of sticking you in the green room in the back and telling you to come out when it was your turn to play and to hide out till it's your time, you know. So it gave me really a fresh perspective on touring and even playing music and wanting to do it even more, you know.
You know, like, I guess right when you released Tomorrowland, there were some critics who weren't the biggest fan of the record just because it was such a different direction. You know, it was like a garage rock record kind of thing. Like, did you think that was going to happen? Were you, like, bracing for some people aren't going to like this?
Oh, yeah, I knew from the get-go that, it wasn't going to be, what people were expecting. But at the same time, that's not really what I was in it for. I wasn't really in it to milk the machine and do that. And if anything, it was, that was kind of one of those moments in my life that I was kind of in that rebellious phase anyway, and I was ready to, stick it to the man anyway.
Yeah.
I really didn't care too much. I mean, it was hard. It was definitely hard, and, people can be rough on you, but at the same time, I think it was really good for me to do that, and it was a record that I felt like I needed to make. Those were songs that even if people didn't like them, they were pretty honest songs for me about things that I was really going through and about things I really felt, and so, at the end of the day, if I would have made that same record with the same lyrics and songs but would have used fiddles and mandolins and banjos and shakers on it, probably would have got a whole lot of a different response. But it was just, all the heavy guitars and all of that, probably people were just like, oh, Bingham lost his mind.
Well, you moved out to California.
Yeah, a commie liberal fucking lives out in California now, breathing all that weird air.
Yeah, but I guess like that's one of those things about you. You kind of live in. I guess it's just because you've been in the Texas circuit, playing dive bars and forever. You kind of do have that two careers as far as like people in Texas and then people in America, that national fan. And I think like a lot of Texas fans were just like, we've lost our guy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And it's kind of like one of those where, you got to share some people,
It was interesting, like guys like Terry Allen, gave me probably the confidence to make a record like that. They're the ones that are like, and Joe and them are like, man, you should, they're the ones that inspired me to, to think outside of the box and not just kind of follow down the wormhole of what everybody else is, kind of going through, and not to say that it's any better than what anybody else is doing or anything like that. It's just kind of, I kind of just thinking in a different way and acting on it and kind of making, hearing those different sounds and traveling around the country and the world too, of just being influenced by different music and different kinds of bands. And, it's interesting. I'll go over to Europe and play like small clubs, and the crowds will be a little bit older and a little more reserved, but at the same time they want to hear all the songs off of like Tomorrowland, all the heavy like guitars and rock and roll, and it's just such a strange, to kind of go from one to the other, different places, and just hear what people are wanting, hear what songs people are wanting to hear, It's really interesting.
Yeah. What's I guess like here in Texas, it's probably more like Mescalito era that they want.
Man, it's changed a lot. It was, I say it was a couple of years ago, but now I think I felt like there's been kind of a shift in where the fans have been really pretty open to things, and it's really interesting to see how much that Tomorrowland record has really grown on some people too.
Yeah.
Like at first people just, really lashed out against it and all that, and then now I get a lot of people at shows calling out for those songs. I don't know if maybe it just took longer for that record to reach other people that like that kind of music, or there's been some kind of crossover within different fan bases and stuff, and but it's been really interesting show to show to hear kind of songs that what people will kind of call out in the crowd.
Yeah, I think like one of the big things for me is always, in our culture, you have to do an album review, and you've had the record maybe like a month, 2 weeks, and you're supposed to have some kind of take on it. And records you don't absorb a record in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
it takes time to really try and figure out what that person's saying and like what they're going for. And obviously some records soak in a lot quicker, but like some records it takes some investment in listening to and really figuring out.
It even takes it my own records for me. Like I said, like I'll like even I'll, a year down the line I'll go back and listen to some of those songs and be like, oh, that's that's what that was what I was really kind of probably going thinking about, and so yeah, you're right. It takes a while for me too.
Yeah. Now I guess like what are you, like 4 records in? 4 official, right?
4 or 5, yeah.
How do you pick that set list now? Because that's a lot of songs, to choose from?
Yeah, I just try to mix it up, and we try to kind of, have all the songs down too. So if people are really calling songs out in the crowd,
can just
we
have an
can whip it
audible?
up. Yeah, we can mix it up. Like I've been making a set list for the tour and having a whole list of some cover songs, and then kind of everything's on the table, everything's game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of have to have it ready to go.
Yeah.
And then it's fun for us too to be able to mix it up each night and play different songs and things like that. It's been a cool experiment in a ways. Like, in some ways, it's kind of it's interesting if you keep the set list the same for 3 or 4 nights, because the band will just get to where, you're not even thinking about playing the songs, and this all of a sudden the band will start doing things with the songs that just come from wherever that place is, and it, sometimes if you mix it up too much every night, it just kind of creates this hesitation because you don't really know what's coming next, or instead of just being in the song that you're playing, you're trying to think about what the next song's going to be and this and that. But sometimes if you make that set list and it's going to be what the show's going to be for that night, man, it just like everything hits so hard and so solid, and that's a pretty cool feeling too. So
Yeah.
kind of go back and forth between the two.
Yeah. Writing, like, I know, like, you kind of go out and you have these ideas, and that's where you kind of go and work on your songs. Especially like this last record, I remember you saying how you had like a little trailer or something
Little
like that,
Airstream,
right?
yeah.
And you go out there and really work on the songs. Is like right now, is that what you're kind of doing? Is like gathering those ideas and going like, this is a song I kind of want to. Is that what you're doing like right now?
Yeah, I am. A lot of that comes from being on the road. I have to go out on the road for a while and just live. I don't really carry a notebook and a pen around and just write down everything I see every day. I just try to more or less live in the moment. And then when I get home, like after this tour, I'll go home and probably find some solitude and just kind of think about and reflect on what I've been gone through in the past year or so. And then that's when the songs start coming. Usually they pour out pretty quick. It's like just kind of keep that stuff building up, and then get home and just open the floodgates, and then it starts to come. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how it's kind of been,
The
in
entire
the past.
time,
But
yeah.
I'm always open to trying new things, and like I don't really have like a set way of, this is the only way I can write songs, and the only way I can do it. I just kind of try to wait for them to come to me.
Yeah. Have you like I guess like the most of your catalog is just you solo writing all those songs. Obviously you've met a whole lot of really cool people and become friends with a lot of cool people. Have there been opportunities to do any co-writes or anything like that, or have you really ever gone down that road of trying
I've
to
tried it, I haven't had much luck. I've got a couple of friends that I like to sit down with that'll come up with music, but when it comes to lyrics and stuff, it's just, I'll come up with some ideas, but a lot of that stuff's so personal, like it's just kind of a strange thing for me to sit in a room with somebody. Like I can write songs if they're just kind of on the surface, about whatever, if it's some topic somebody wants to write about, but like to dig down for the deep stuff, I kind of need to be on my own. I've tried to, I've gotten kind of wrangled into some of those songwriter circles in Nashville and the cubicle rooms, and it's just, it's so stale.
Just a
and,
weird place to write.
Yeah, it's so awkward. It's so weird. It's like it's the most uninspiring thing I've ever done. When it kind of makes you just want to like, I'm gonna go get a job doing something else.
Yeah, that's one of those things about. Obviously, some great songs have come out of collaboration, but like
amazing songs, but it's just for somebody else.
So much of it has to do with, I can't remember who it was. We were talking about this kind of thing, and they kind of said like you have to think about it as like you're giving up an idea, and like you have one shot at doing this, and really, if it doesn't work, like there's no putting the toothpaste back in the.
Yeah, that idea's gone.
You're not gonna be able to really do anything with it after that, so it's a lot of trust in somebody else, which
for
is
sure it is, man. And then if you get 3 or 4 people in the room and you start going down with something, you never know where they're going to take it after that. And then I mean, it is what it is, but it wasn't, that's just not really my scene.
I hear you. I know, like maybe one day you'll do like a collab record. Like Dylan did. I don't know. He co-wrote a couple records with that one dude from the Grateful Dead. Maybe you'll do that with like I don't know, blanket on a name.
I'm totally into that kind of stuff of doing like a whole record or something like that, you know, and collaborating and writing songs, and especially music wise, having some, you know, collaborate, you know, letting somebody else. Like I've got a good friend named Jed Hughes. It's a guitar player that I've known for a long time. That we've kind of combined our studios out in LA, and we've done a bunch of stuff where he's built the music up, and I've gone in there and, you know, just started singing to it, and you know, just kind of making things up like that. And we've come up with some pretty cool stuff. So I'm really into that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You've worked with some really great producers, T-Bone, Mark Ford. What's the difference? Like, what's the difference between working with those guys? Like, what's the
different hours of the day probably was the main thing. But yeah, I don't know. They all have their own things, you know. Mark was a lot more hands-on as far as like playing in the studio. I mean, like on Mescalito and Roadhouse Sun, I mean, you know, most of those guitar solos that's mostly Mark playing. You know, he played bass on that record. He played a lot of it. He played piano on that record. He really built a lot of the music on that stuff. You know, you know, when I was with the Dead Horses, we were just a pretty rough Roadhouse band. You know, I was probably the least musical person in the band. You know, I knew, you know, a handful of, you know, cowboy chords on the guitar. You know, Corby was probably the most versed, you know, having some kind of formal music training, and but other than that, Mark, you know, really built a lot of that stuff and really taught me how to play in a band, you know, how to play with other musicians. And so that was you know, kind of like going to rock and roll school with Mark. He's first guy to put electric guitar in my hand was on that record. He bought me this old Craftsman guitar for like $100 on eBay and handed it to me with a slide and goes, "Here, man, I think this fits your personality."
Yeah.
And I didn't even know how to plug it in. You know, I'd never even had an amp before, you know. And really took that right on the road. And like the first time I played electric guitar was like at a gig, you know.
Yeah.
Just way too loud, up all the way, you know. Nobody could hear anything in the band. I'm just, you know. And then by the time we got to work with T-Bone, you know, we had had a couple of years of touring under our belt and had a little bit more experience. But he was even, you know, he was just kind of like, you know, set up like you're setting up in the living room at my house and just play the songs and I'll record them. You know, that was about it. We did that whole record in 3 days.
Really?
Yeah. We just tracked like 5 songs a day, and we did one after the other. And, you know, there was a few things, if it just sounded horrible, he'd step in and be like, you know, you guys need to maybe go change the direction on this or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of think he understood that we were only going to be able to play those songs how we were going to be able to play them. You know, it wasn't like we weren't going to be, even if he gave us a bunch of direction, you know, I don't know if we were musically inclined enough to take them to, you know, that far of a different place, you know, maybe where he would head in that. So that was kind of the experience with that record.
Yeah. Well, you know, him saying set up like you're going to play in my living room. Those songs are really like living room songs. Like those are like, I want to hear those songs in a room of 25. You know?
And we did that too. I mean, before we did the record, we went over to his house, and he's just like, "Man, y'all just set up in my living room," and we just sat like this close in a circle around a table, and we played all the songs for him through the whole how many songs I had, and he goes, "Let's just do them just like that." When we get over to the studio, we'll put you all in the same room, put some mics in front of you, and he said, "Let's just do that," you know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I thought there's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, don't meet your heroes.
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing. It's like, I was expecting some, like, you know, T-Bone, he's wearing the sunglasses the entire time.
Oh, he was definitely doing that.
Was he just doing the, he talks with somebody else and then they tell you what to do? That kind of thing? I don't know.
No, man, he was there and in the room and, you know, had a lot of input, you know, tonally on getting sounds of the amps. And, you know, there was a little bit more going on than just that. You know, I don't want to downplay it too much, but it was just... what was really cool that I liked about T-Bone was the atmosphere he created. Was that it was such a laid back kind of, you know, you were so comfortable in there, like you didn't really feel like you were on, and there was no pressure. You didn't feel like you were in the hot seat. You didn't feel like somebody was watching you and judging you of what you were playing. It was just really like we were kind of sitting in the living room just having fun playing the songs and really in the songs, you know. And I think the subtleties of him creating that atmosphere is kind of something that he's a master at.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of producers or people, you get in the studio with them and it's just not a very comfortable vibe. You know, you feel like there's pressure. They've got a lot of people in the room that, you know, you don't even know who they are. And they're, you know, it's just, you're sitting there pouring your heart out with these songs for the first time on over a microphone in a studio. It's, you know, you kind of want people around you that you trust and that you know, and you can kind of be in this headspace in, and you know, you don't have somebody over there filming you with their phone in the corner or whatever, or something like that. It can get weird. So I really enjoyed that part of being in the studio with T-Bone, of just kind of his subtle ways of creating an amazing kind of atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and let you go here.
All right.
It's been about 30 minutes or so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you guys
you
again,
too.
man.